The word cholera had always sounded strange to young Mihawk, as if it belonged to an ancient language carved into stone. Because centuries ago, doctors believed the violent vomiting of cholera came from disturbances in the body's humors. But what had started as a medical mystery in dusty historical books became a nightmare for Mihawk's village long before she understood its dangers. Cholera was not a distant story from old medical journals. It was a reality shaped by water, environment, poverty, and ignorance, spreading through rivers and drains like a silent storm. Mihawk lived near a polluted stream that cut through the edge of her settlement. The water was once clean, but over the years the population grew. Factories dumped waste, and people began throwing garbage into it out of habit. Flies hovered over open drains. Children played barefoot near puddles, and the smell of decay never truly faded. Poverty forced them to focus on survival rather than safety. Food vendors sold uncovered meals by the roadside, and drinking water came from an old hand pump whose rust had long become part of its taste. In such an environment, cholera waited silently, needing only one crack in the system to explode. They flooded the streets, overflowing drains and mixing sewage with drinking water sources. People cheered at first, thinking the rains brought blessings, but the blessing turned quickly into a threat. A few days later, a neighbor's child fell sick with severe diarrhea and vomiting. The family brushed it off as a common stomach bug, blaming bad food or perhaps the change in weather, like many in their area did. Some believed it was because the child had eaten mangoes with water. Others blamed an evil spirit that affected children during the rainy months. Nobody imagined it could be cholera, but the illness spread rapidly. Soon several families had sick members. Some were too weak to stand. A few could not even call out for help. Panic began to rise. People whispered that it was a curse. Myths grew taller than truth, and superstition traveled faster than the contaminated water itself. Then, one morning, her younger brother, Daniel, woke up pale, shivering, and dehydrated. Within hours, he was vomiting repeatedly and suffering from watery diarrhea so severe that his lips turned dry and his eyes sunken. Their mother cried and held his hand, while their father stood helplessly, unsure what to do. Neighbors brought herbal remedies, some boiled leaves, some thick sugary drinks, some salt water mixed in rough proportions, but nothing worked. The child grew weaker by the hour. Mihawk, who had learned about cholera in school, felt a tremor of recognition. She remembered her teacher explaining that cholera was caused by the bacterium Vibrio cholerae, which entered the body through contaminated water. She recalled the symptoms: severe diarrhea, dehydration, vomiting, cramps, and rapid weakness. She also remembered the teacher emphasizing that without quick rehydration and proper treatment, cholera could be fatal. But her parents had never been taught this. The people around her trusted old ideas and prayers over science, ignoring the neighbors insisting they wait for traditional healers. She convinced her parents to take Daniel to the government clinic. They resisted at first. Clinic visits meant long queues, rude staff, paperwork, and sometimes medicine shortages. But Daniel was fading. Finally, they wrapped him in a sheet and rushed to the clinic through muddy streets that smelled of decay. The clinic was crowded with people suffering similar symptoms. Doctors worked tirelessly, their faces lined with exhaustion, but full of determination. The head doctor examined Daniel and confirmed it immediately. Cholera. He explained urgently that the bacterium from contaminated water was spreading rapidly because of the rain, poor sanitation, and lack of awareness. He put Daniel on an oral rehydration solution and intravenous fluids. The doctor told them that cholera could kill within hours if untreated. But it was also one of the most preventable and treatable diseases if caught early. The next several hours felt like days. Mihawk held her brother's hand as he fought the waves of dehydration and cramps. Her parents prayed silently, watching the drip chamber above him slowly empty into his fragile body. A nurse assured them that the medicine would work, and that many children had recovered if they reached in time. Those hopeful words felt like a soft breeze in a storm. Mayhawk felt tears on her cheeks, not of fear, but of gratitude. A few days later, when he was strong enough to return home, a group of NGO health workers visited their village. They had been tracking the outbreak and distributing water purification tablets, oral rehydration packets, and educational pamphlets. They explained how cholera spread through unsafe water and how boiling water or using chlorine could prevent it. They taught families how to wash hands properly, store food safely, and avoid eating uncovered street snacks. They also spoke about the importance of vaccination, telling them about the oral cholera vaccine that could protect communities for years. Many villagers were skeptical. Some believed vaccines were traps made by foreign organizations. Others insisted that traditional remedies were enough. But the NGO workers, along with the clinic staff, spoke patiently. They involved local religious leaders who assured the villagers that protecting one's health was not only permissible, but encouraged in their faith. Slowly, people began opening their hearts to the idea. Mayhawk stood by, observing the transformation. She saw how education, even in small doses, had the power to break the walls built by false beliefs. She watched how a simple packet of clean water or a chlorine tablet could protect families from a disease that once terrorized them. She saw how WHO guidelines were being followed, safe water distribution, vaccination drives, early detection, and community awareness. For the first time, the village worked together with doctors, NGOs, government bodies, and volunteers. Unity became stronger than fear. But the battle wasn't over. The village needed long-term change, not temporary patches. The polluted river still flowed like a wound across the land. Garbage continued to pile near the drains. Many families were too poor to buy bottled water or maintain hygienic kitchens. Children still played near contaminated puddles. Mayhawk thought deeply about how poverty and lack of education were the real roots of cholera in their area. The disease thrived not because people were cursed, but because their circumstances left them vulnerable. Inspired by the health workers, Mayhawk decided to take action. She demonstrated how to make oral rehydration drinks at home using water, sugar, and salt in proper proportions. She explained the importance of washing hands before eating. She helped elders understand the role of clean water and how polluted rivers carried germs that human eyes could not see. Children listened to her eagerly, fascinated by the idea that invisible creatures caused disease. Within months, her initiative grew. School teachers joined her, NGOs provided materials, and even the local government became involved, installing new water filters and cleaning drains more regularly. Health awareness campaigns began appearing in mosques, community centers, and markets. Posters described symptoms, treatment, and prevention in simple language. Vaccination teams returned with better attendance. The number of cholera cases dropped drastically. One day, a journalist from a nearby city visited to document how the village fought the outbreak. He interviewed doctors, NGO workers, religious leaders, and families. But when he met Mayhawk, he paused, amazed at her courage and knowledge. He asked how a young girl had become the voice of health awareness in her region. Mayhawk replied with a humble smile, "I just didn't want another child to suffer like my brother did." Everyone deserves clean water, safe food, and the right knowledge. Cholera is a disease, not a destiny. Her words spread across social media. Soon, larger organizations reached out to support her efforts. Doctors offered training sessions. NGOs provided mobile water purification units. A regional government allocated funds to repair the sewage system. Schools added chapters on hygiene and disease prevention. Step by step, cholera lost its grip on the community. Years passed, and Mayhawk's village transformed. Clean drinking water became a right, not a privilege. Drains were covered. Food vendors followed hygiene rules. Children learned health habits before they learned multiplication tables. Mothers taught younger generations how to prevent waterborne diseases. Even the elderly, who once believed only in old remedies, proudly spoke about the importance of boiling water and getting vaccinated. The village that had once trembled at the mention of cholera became an example of recovery and awareness. Mayhawk continued her mission, now trained as a health educator. She traveled to neighboring regions, teaching families who suffered from poverty, pollution, and lack of education. She met communities where cholera still lingered in the shadows, fueled by similar fears and superstition. She spoke gently, sharing her story, telling them how a single decision choosing knowledge over fear had changed her village forever. Many listened, many changed. Many survived because of the awareness she carried like a lantern in long, dark corridors. And in every village she visited, she saw a reflection of her own past. Children eager to learn. Mothers desperate to protect their families. Elders struggling between old beliefs and new science. But above all, she saw hope that one day cholera would not be a threat, but a memory of a time when people lacked the simple knowledge that could save lives. The story of cholera in her region became a story of empowerment rather than fear. A story of people uniting regardless of religion, age, class, or background. A story where WHO guidelines, NGO support, government action, and community willingness created an unbreakable shield against disease. A story where education proved stronger than superstition. A story where health became a shared responsibility. And as Mayhawk stood by the river one evening, watching its cleaner water flow under the fading sun, she realized that the fight against cholera was not just about medicine or sanitation. It was about dignity. It was about raising voices against ignorance. It was about giving families the tools to protect themselves. It was about refusing to let poverty decide who lived and who died. Most of all, it was about believing that no matter how deeply a disease rooted itself into history, humanity always had the power to rise above it. And so Mayhawk continued her journey, step by step, village by village, carrying the flame of awareness wherever she went, knowing that the light of knowledge could reach even the darkest corners, turning fear into strength, despair into action, and every challenge into a new story of hope.